Hello and welcome to a new video. This one is about Neural DSP plugins, especially for metal, for rhythm and lead tones. And I have a little project here. It's the project I used for the Mark II C+ demo. You can watch the video right there. And I wrote this little piece a few weeks ago. Let's hear how this track sounds. So that's the little track, I hope you like it. And I apologize for a little artifacts in the high end. I always have little artifacts going on when I route the complete mix into OBS. I'm not sure right now why that is. Maybe I did something wrong in the mix. But I think the sound is okay for now. And at first let me show you the project very quick. And for the drums I used Grim drums from Bogwin Digital. And I'm sure you know this, it's an awesome drum library. I used a preset here. There is some mixing stuff going on inside the plugin. But I also did something extra mixing here. I wrote all the single instruments into Cubase, into the mixer. And I did some extra stuff here. But that's not the point for this video. If you want me to talk more about the drums, please let me know in the comments below. And for the bass I used Eurobase 2, just very quick for little demos like this. And the focus on this video is more about the rhythm guitars here. And as you can see here, there are 4 DI tracks. And right now I have on every single track the Nameless suite loaded. And on the DI group there's just an console, an SSL console going on, and a multiband compressor, just to tame the palm mutes a little bit. And that's it. But I also show you my little mix master here. There's also an EQ, just a simple low and high cut, an SSL bus compressor, then a clipper, flatline, and at the very end a limiter, just for a little bit of loudness. And on the stereo out, these 2 plugins are deactivated and I have via stream, so I can route the audio from Cubase into OBS, and that's it. So, and in case if you wonder about the lead tone, I have 2 little lead tracks here and 2 guitar solos, and I use the Soldano on all the lead tracks, just a few different adjustments, and that's it. But that's also not the point for this video. Maybe we can talk about this later. And let's focus more on the eye tracks here. So I think it's a cool idea to start totally from scratch, and let's create the guitar tone together from scratch. So, and at first let's put all the plugins into the default mode, and as you can see here, I use the default mode here. But to make sure I show you this, let's reset all the plugins. Except for this one, it's also the default mode, but I used a different IR here. But I show you everything later. And on the DI group, let's reset the SSL console here. So this is the default setting here. Let's deactivate the low and high pass. And the multiband compressor, also the default setting. And here it is. And let's deactivate these two. So now it sounds like this. Not a big difference, but it's more muddy. It's more big sounding, but not that great for the complete mix. So what I always do when I quad track the guitars, as you can see here, I have guitar 1 and 2 at 0 volume and guitar 3 and 4 minus 2 dB. Sometimes minus 2, minus 3, it depends on the guitar tracks. And for the first guitars, I have the default setting loaded, and I use the stock IRs here, the dynamic 57 and the condenser 184, and I did nothing here. I didn't tweak the amp here. But for the first guitar, I used the grind, and let's listen to guitar in solo. So let's bring it back to the center here. And of course, we want a little bit more gain, a little more boost, a little bit more gain. And the first thing, be careful with too much gain with one guitar, because we have 4 guitars here. And so I always use a nearly mid gain setting here. And of course, we can use the gain on the amp, but in my opinion, it sounds fine right out of the box with the default setting. And I use more the grind pedal here, just to boost the amp a little bit more. Let's leave it right there. And let's bring the guitar back to the left. And let's focus on guitar 2. Let's bring it to the center. And here the same thing, it's the default setting, the stock IRs, dynamic 57 and the condenser. But here I want to use the hex drive, and let's play with this a little bit. And for my taste, I almost always use 0 extra drive here. I play more with the level knob. The tone is okay for me, but let's play more with the level knob here. and that sounds okay for me. Let's bring the guitar back to the right, and let's listen to both of the first guitars. That sounds great for me. So let's go to guitar 3 and 4. And for these guitars, I used also the default setting. I didn't tweak the amp here. I didn't tweak the pedals here, but I used a different IR here. I deactivated the second IR, and for the first one, I used the Bogwin Digital down-tuned rhythm pack. And I used the third IR from this pack. It's called the Corona 19. And the same for guitar 4. Exactly the same here. So let's listen how these guitar sounds. And what I like about this IR is the low mids. You really can hear nice and thick low mids, but also very tight at the same time. And of course, it's a little bit thinner sounding compared to the first guitars, but all together sound like this. And as you can hear, we have really nice low mids here and really tight and thick sounding low mids, and I really like this sound. So, and maybe we can increase the gain on guitar 3 and 4 a little bit. So let's add a little bit more boost from the grind pedals here on guitar 3 and 4. So now let's listen again to guitar 3 and 4. And let's increase the volume a little bit. Also the output on the plugin. Let's say -6, around -6. So let's listen again to the first pair of guitars. And the second pair of guitars. And in case if you wonder, the first pair is more about a really thick guitar sound with really thick and nice low mids, and the second pair is more about a tight layer on top. Sometimes I do the opposite. I use guitar 1 and 2 for a more tight sound, and guitar 3 and 4 for a more thicker sound, but in this project it's the opposite. But it depends what you want and what else is going on. And yeah, so let's listen to all 4 together. And in my opinion, that's a really nice sound we can work with. So, but now you have to realize the guitars alone sound great, but for the whole mix it's a little bit too much. A little bit too much low mids, too much low end. But let's start with the overall volume level. And one thing I recommend is to let the whole mix running and then put the fader of the guitars all the way down and then bring it back to your taste until it sounds good for you. So here is the processing. It's deactivated right now. and let's focus only on the overall volume level of the guitars. So let's leave it right there. It's not perfect, but it's okay for now. So, and that's a method that works always good for me. I put the fader all the way down and bring it back while the whole mix is running. So now let's talk about the processing. Let's go back to the SSL console, and this is the default setting. I can click reset here. So you can see it's the default setting. Let's deactivate this low and high pass. And one thing I want to do, I really like this low shelf here, and I like this to reduce some of the low end and the low mids of the guitars. But I want to do this with the whole mix running. So let's do it right now. So right now we have the frequency set to 200. I didn't tweak the frequency here. And I have reduced the low shelf at around -2 dB here. And the reason why I do this with the whole mix going on, when you do this in solo, of course you can hear the guitars much better, but you have to be careful. When you do this in solo for too long, your brain and your ears are constantly reacting to these frequency shifts. And I guarantee you, you're making really bad decisions very quick. So I like to do this while the whole mix is going on. Of course, sometimes I solo the guitars too and do just a few little tweaks. But when I do this in solo, I do it very quick. And I always go back to the full mix, so my ears don't get tired too much. Yeah, and that's very important. And another thing is, of course, we can tweak the frequency of the low shelf a little bit, but that depends on the guitar, on the tuning, on the pickups, on the overall raw sound. Just play around with the frequencies. When you set this too high, you lose too much of the low mids. I always set this to, let's say, between 150 and 200. So let's set this to 180 and listen how this sounds. Let's go to another part of the song. Yeah, and here the same, around -2 dB. That sounds okay for me. So another thing are the low mids, and for my guitar that I used for these tracks, I always found around 600 and 500. That's always danger area, so let's boost this area a little bit. Let's tweak down the Q filter here. And here the same, I do this while the whole mix is running, and a setting at around -3 dB, that sounds okay for me now. Sometimes a good thing is to add a little bit of the highs and the high mids, so let's try this. So, and that sounds okay for me. So with the highs and the high mids, it's most of the time it's just a few dB. Here we have 0.6 and here we have 1.5, 1.6, 1.5, and that's just enough. And of course, this is really important with the high mids and the high frequencies. Do this while the whole mix is running. Especially the high mids are really sensitive for the human ear, and when you do this in solo, you are making bad decisions. So let's hear the guitar sound without the console. And now with the console. And I hope you can hear this, the guitars sound more focused and more into the mix. And I hope you can hear this, the guitars sound less fat, but of course more mid-focused and more into the mix. And the next thing I want to do is to tame the palm mutes a little bit. And I really like the FabFilter Pro MB for this. And as you can see here, that's the default setting, and I can click right here, so I can create a frequency band, and let's set this to, let's say, 60 Hertz and around 250, and let's leave the attack and the release setting where it is. Let's put the threshold all the way down, so and let's hear how this sounds. And right now it's nothing going on because we have put down the threshold. And for the multiband compressor, I only want this for the palm mutes. So when you play open chords or open single notes or whatever, I don't want the compressor to react to this, but I want the compressor react to the palm mutes. So let's increase the threshold here. And as you can see and hear, the compressor is reacting more to the palm mutes. And when the open single notes come in, the compressor is going near to 0 here. And that's exactly what I want. But be careful when you overdo this. The guitars are sounding very thin when you overdo this. So that sounds okay for me. And in case if you wonder about a low cut and a high cut, so that's always a thing I want to talk about. Let's add an Pro Q3 here, just for the analyzer. And let's see what is going on the low end and the very high end here. And you can see we don't have a low and a high pass activated. And there is not that much going on. Let's activate this analyzer here. And as you can see here, below 6K, it's not that much going on, and below 80 Hz, it's not that much going on. So we really don't need a low and high pass here. Because I have done this too, I put always a low cut and high cut, but really be careful with this. We can set, let's say, at 60 Hz or something to cut really of the low end rumble, but I don't use an high cut here. The guitars sound great for me, the high end sound great. We already boosted a little bit of this high end and high mids, and that's it for me. This one at around 60 Hz is always a safety one to reduce some of the very low end rumble. But again, look at the frequency analyzer here. Maybe we can set an high cut at around 12K or something, but definitely not more. The guitars sound great, and that's it for me. But that depends always on your raw guitar sound. And one thing I want to mention is, when you have done this with the multiband compressor, you can go back to these knobs and tweak it again a little bit. Because most of the time the boomy sounding low mids are coming from the palm mutes. And when you have tamed these, you can bring back the low mids here a little bit. But right now it sounds okay for me. So in my opinion, we have a really good sounding guitar sound. It's really rounded and it sits great in the mix, in my opinion. And another thing I want to talk about, let's load up and row Q3 here. And before I do something like this here, because we all know this, and that's very dangerous. You can destroy your guitar sound very quick. And of course, sometimes it's necessary to cut some of the resonant frequencies or some whistling frequencies in the high end or the high mids. But I always start with the console or something similar like a console plugin, and I always start with the overall round guitar sound. Make a few adjustments here on these knobs, and almost always it's more than enough to do these little adjustments here. And I only load the fab filter up when I hear something else is going on. And you notice maybe sometimes it's 4K or something, or 2K, it's a little bit too much. But for me, it's okay now, so let's ditch this plugin. For me, right now it sounds completely okay. So I don't have to do anything more here. And as I said before, when you load up an parametric EQ and do too much, you can destroy your guitar sound very quick. It starts to sound phasey and very thin. And yeah, that's another thing I want to bring out. Always start with something like this and tweak a little bit with these knobs here. Sometimes it's enough to do these little tweaks here. So, and that's it for the Fortin Nameless plugin. So let's use a different plugin for the guitar sound, and let's see if we can get another great sound here. So let's deactivate the Fortin Nameless suit here. And right now, as you can see here, we have nothing going on. on the single guitar tracks. And let's put the console in the default setting. Also deactivate the low and high pass. And also the Pro MB into the default setting. And let's deactivate this app filter EQ here. And so let's also deactivate these two. And now we have nothing going on. So you only hear the eye tracks here. So, and now let's see what we can use for the guitar sound here. And let's say, or let's choose Archetype Gojira here. So here's the default setting, and let's listen to guitar 1 here. So let's bring it back to the center. That sounds good for me already, but let's do some tweaks here. And at first I do some tweaks, and after that I show you what I have done here. So that sounds good for me. So I used the first IR, the Dynamic 57, but for the second IR I used the Ribbon 160. I think this one is based on an Biodynamic N160. And I tweaked the mic position just a little bit, and I played a little bit with the level of the second microphone. And I added an overdrive pedal, played a little bit with the level and the tone knob. I didn't use the extra distortion here. And I reduced the gain a little bit. And the same for the mid-range, and that's it. So let's copy this setting to guitar 2. Let's bring guitar 1 back to the left. And let's choose a different second IR for the second guitar. Let's say the Dynamic 421. So let's solo guitar 2. So let's listen to guitar 1 and 2 together. So let's adjust the input and the output a little bit. So, and for guitar 3 and 4, let's say we use Archetype Nolly. So let's solo guitar 3 here. So at first, let's play with the input a little bit. And here the same. We have only one IR activated right now. And let's leave it there. And let's play with the amp and with the overdrive pedal. So let's leave it right there. Also copy the setting to guitar 4. And let's listen to guitar 3 and 4 together. And now all 4 together. Guitar 2 seems a little bit louder here. What I have done here, input 3, output 3. Maybe it's the different IR here, the different level setting. So let's adjust that a little bit. That's quite unusual to do. I have to do this with this level now, but that changes the tone also. So, but let's leave it right now like this. So guitar 1 and 2 are a little bit leveled equally. And let's go down with guitar 3 and 4 a little bit. And now let's put these in a mix. And now let's do some tweakings here with the console. So that sounds good for me. I did not the same tweakings, but almost the same. Little bit of the highs, little bit of the high mids, a dip in the mid-range, and I use the low shelf here to reduce the low end a little bit. And the same thing with the multiband compressor. And just a few tweakings here with the Pro Crew 3. And I used a dynamic band here to reduce some of the palm mutes here. And I used the threshold setting here. So this thing is only reacting when the palm mutes are hitting in. So it sounds a little bit tighter for me. So now it sounds good already for me. But maybe let's look at the analyzer and let's use a low pass here. Yeah, that sounds good for me. And let's try the low cut. Let's leave it right there. And as I said before, the guitar sound is already good for me, but maybe the guitars sound a little bit dark now. So let's try an Pultex style EQ. And let's see. Let's try this one from Softtube. So we have a little bit of the high end back, and let's also reduce some of the low mids here. Okay, let's leave it right there. It just cleans up the low mids a little bit more. And now we have a second guitar sound with the same other instruments. And let's hear how this sounds. I think it sounds a little bit fatter, not as tight as the Nameless, but that's a different sound in my opinion. It sounds also great. Maybe it's a little bit more old school Swedish death metal style. And I show you another little trick, because as I said before, the guitar sound is good already in my opinion. We have brought a little bit of this high end back. Maybe I can put this after this EQ here, but let's leave it for now. But now I have the impression we destroyed the mid-range of the guitars a little bit. And sometimes when I reduce the low mids here and add the high end, sometimes I underestimate the importance of the mid-range of the guitars. So let's listen to the guitar sound again. And let's try something different here. Let's add another EQ. And let's add one band. And let's use a very broad Q filter here. Let's say 0.5. And let's put the frequency to around, let's say 600 for now. And now we have a very broad EQ band here. So let's put it to 0. And I would do that maybe another day, so I have more fresh ears to do this. But I will show you that now. So now I'm trying to bring the mid-range a little bit back of the guitars. And this always with the full mix. That's really important. Don't do this in solo. Do this always with the full mix. And I hope you can hear this when I increase this broad EQ band here. Let's say 1 dB or 2 dB. It sounds okay and it brings the mid-range back for the guitars. But as soon as I hit something like 3 dB, it sounds too boxy. So let's listen to it again. So that sounds totally okay for me. We have increased this band around 1.5 dB and now we have a nice sounding mid-range of the guitars in my opinion, because I always like a mid-forward sound of the guitars. But of course when you overdo this, it's too much. Now of course it starts to sound boxy. So now let's leave it here, 1.3 dB. And another thing is when you do this EQ moves, give your ears a little break. Don't do this on the fly. So give your ears a little break, make an adjustment like we have done right now, and maybe a few seconds, and then play it again, listen to it. And then again the same thing, give your ears a little break of a few seconds. Now we bypass this EQ band here and listen to it again after a little break. And of course, this guitar sound now is a little bit more fat. But for me, it's my personal taste. I like a little bit of a mid push. So let's activate this band again. And of course, after a little break. to be honest, this sounds better to me. We have a nice mid-range of the guitars. The guitars are much clearer in the mix, and I really like this. Maybe some people like the guitar sound without this band, but I like it with this band for right now. So, and why these little breaks with a few seconds? When you do this on the fly, your brain and your ears are constantly reacting to these frequency shifts. So for example, when you do this, for a few seconds, you don't know what is right, what is wrong, what sounds good. You totally destroy your ears. So I like to do this with these little breaks, as I said before. And let's put it back to 1.3. And maybe you say, these little breaks, just a few seconds, it does nothing. But for me, to be honest, it really can give your ears a little break, and it really helps to make better EQ decisions, especially in the mid-range and in the high end. So always do a little break, make an adjustment, give your ears a little break, maybe a few seconds, maybe half a minute, and then listen to it again. And you hear the differences much better without destroying your ears. So let's listen to it again. And that sounds great to me. And this little mid-range push here, the guitars sound now also better with the other lead guitars, in my opinion. That's another advantage of a little bit of the mid-range of the guitars. And now let's focus more on the lead guitars. And I'll show you what I did here very quick. So let's jump to this solo here. And I used the Soldano for the lead tracks. And I used a lead preset here, the lead one, I did for myself. And it's the dynamic 57 and just minor tweakings of the amp. And I used an overdrive here. And I used the delay and the reverb here. So let's solo this. Let's solo this solo. And I always do some tweakings with the EQ here for a lead tone. So we don't need that much low end and low mids for the lead sound. I definitely prefer more mids for a lead tone. And what I also did, I used a multiband compressor for the lead sound, because when you play low notes or lower notes on the scale or whatever tones you are using, there are always some resonant frequencies, and it really can mudden up your lead tone. So I used one band here between 50 and 250 Hertz, and it really cleans up the lower frequency range of the lead tones a little bit. And as you can hear, when I do this little scale one with palm muted notes, it really cleans up the low frequencies here. And the same here, it really reacts to the palm mutes, so everything is a little bit tighter on the low frequencies. And the same for the second solo. And you really can see it when I play the very high notes. It's not reacting that much, but when I go lower on the lower notes, then it reacts more and more. And also what it does when you play a solo and you change the hand position, you always have some noises going on. Some noises are good, but some noises are really only resonant, and this thing really keeps these noises on a lower level or cleans up these noises a little bit, especially on this frequency band we chose here. So that's always a good thing for me to do on lead tones, but of course not too much, otherwise the guitar sound would be very thin. So, and now that's it for this video. I hope you like this. Give the video a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comment section and subscribe to my channel. So yeah, thanks for watching and bye bye.